lightness. So I set the timer up for an hour at 66. So the flashing H. I don't know if you can see that. Sorry, the camera's a bit rubbish. It's a flashing H, extreme close up. So that's really telling us that the elements are heating up and it's trying to get up to temperature. The timer won't actually start until it's reached the temperature. This is just bringing the water up to boil for the mash. And then as soon as I've got up to temperature, I'll add the grains. Should give me about 10 minutes to twiddle my thumbs. And that's nice little reflection there. Ooh, Brewster. So if you can see in there, we've got the bottom filter in there. I won't put the top filter in until we've got the grains in there, and I'll show that in a minute. Hey, right, so the Brewster started beeping at me. That tells me it's got up to temperature. What we've done is we've set a starting temperature of 66.6, quite specific. The nice thing about this is that you can got quite granular control over the temperatures that you're using. So now it's time to add the grain. We've got up to temperature. So I don't know if you can see in there. What we've got is we've got a grain basket with a central sort of tube. Now at the bottom of that is a filter to stop grain and sediment going into the pump, which I'll show you later. We've got then a false bottom now of the grain basket itself, and then we've got a little stopper here. That stopper there is just to stop grain going into this tube here to get down through. The whole point of the false bottom there is really to stop sediment and grain getting into the mechanics of this boiling kettle. So I'm going to put in my grain now. I've got 2 bags. It's a recipe from brewersfriend.com. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this now. Just trying to twist it. Right. Yeah, so I'm using a recipe from Brewer's Friend. I've signed up at the start of the summer to Dark Farm, and Dark Farm are a hop subscription service. And what's nice about those is that you kind of don't get this. You basically they send you some hops every quarter, and you don't really know what you're going to get. So, and I quite like that because it means that you can experiment with different recipes, try out hops you may not have tried out normally. Today I'm going to brew mostly with Zeus. Zeus hops is a recipe from brewersfriend.com. I think I said the grain mix is from Malt Miller. I've just basically filled out the recipe generator online, and they sent me it all pre-crushed because I don't have a mill myself. I've had to make some tweaks. It's an American recipe, so apart from the fact that it's all in Fahrenheit and gallons and ounces, I'm sort of doing it all metric, which it doesn't make any difference. But actually, the recipe calls for things like American Pale Two-Row, which in Europe we don't use. So the core base is just crisp pale Marisotta, and then I've got some sort of biscuit malt in substitute instead of Victory, and then I've just got some carapils just to sort of help with the head and give it a bit more depth, hopefully. So here goes. I'm going to film this. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I might just edit it out later. This is 1 bag of the malt. It's about 4.5 kilos in total, so it's quite a grain heavy recipe. I have, like I said, I've got about 19 litres in here of water ready to go at temperature. Obviously the temperature will drop when I add this, and then we get it up to boil, well not up to boil, sorry, we get it up to hold it at that temperature for 60 minutes or so. There's the second batch of grain. Need a spoon. There it is. So I just need to stir that all up, make sure all the water, all the grain is stirred in and it's not causing any balls or dough balls. It's saturated with the water that's in there. It's a bit light actually. I mean, given the recipe said actually for less water. I might add some more water to this. I'm going to put this on for an hour, But I'm going to set a time for half an hour, and that's so I can put a stock pot on to boil for the sparge. I do love some of this terminology. So obviously we're going to sparge the grain at the end. It's very dry. Very dry. I end up with some biscuits at the end of this, with our biscuit malt. So yeah, I'm just going to stir this up and then we'll see how we get on. Alright, a little bit concerned. It's just quite a dry mix, but what I've done, if you just see, is now I've given that a good stir. I've put the top filter mesh that goes into the grain basket, and then what we do is we put the lid on. It comes with a pump around the side, and the idea of the pump is to circulate the wort while you're mashing, and then we've got a recirculation arm with some plastic tubing. The plastic tubing came loose after the first time I've used it. It's the only criticism I've really had of this, but obviously that's just plastic. So a small Jubilee clip will just help keep that on while we do the mash. So what we use, we put the lid on, having added that top grain filter slash mesh. I'm going to make up some new words now. What we do is we clamp on. Let's see if you can see this. It would help if I adjusted the screen so I can see. So we've got here a simple pump for the valve. So that's off at the moment, sets it off. We've got it coming to the top. Now that the temperature's started, we can activate pump. It's with the second switch here. And then we just turn this valve, and if I just lift this lid up temporarily, what you'll see is that wort recirculating. It's quite low. Let me just need to crank it up a notch. We've got to be careful not to put it up too much. There. You can see it sort of stirring in there. So what we need to do is keep an eye on the gauge here. That's showing us the volume. If that gets too low, then the pump's working too hard. But we've got a bit of flexibility there, so I can just turn it down a bit. If I do see that dropping, I'll just sort of slow it down a bit. And what that's doing is, while the water is holding that temperature of 66.6 degrees Celsius, centigrade, whatever you call it, for an hour, we're just circulating that wort. So that's really sort of filtering as much of the sugars out of the grain as we can possibly muster, using a combination of heat, the movement of water, and then we just leave it, and then we'll sparge. I'll come on to that in a bit once that hour's up. I've just realised this thing's got a light on, so hopefully it's not just black and you can't see anything. Not much to look at though. So yeah, that's our hour done. I was a bit worried about how dry the grain bill was, so I've topped up with about, I don't know, about 1.5 litres just of extra water, just to help it going, help get that water through it. You can see it's come out a really nice sort of caramelly colour. I don't know if you can see that actually. I'll see it from the other end. So yeah, we can start to see that colour really coming through from the caramel malts and the biscuit malts, the Belgian, what was they? Let me just have a look. Sorry, I'm on my computer. Dingemans biscuit malts from Belgium. And if I look through here, I don't know if you can see. So this is the level. So we can start to see the colour really coming through after that mashing. The next step now is to sparge. So to do the sparging, I'm going to see if I can use, well, I'll raise the grain basket and show you what I'm doing. 2 seconds. Very professional. I hope you can tell. So we get this little dingle-doobry with the Brewster Brew. I haven't really talked about this. I mean, you get lots of different ones on the market, and the prices vary. This is the Brewster by Brewolution. you'll get a lot of very dodgy puns in all your brewing equipment. The reason I like this is that they're based in Denmark, but they have some very good YouTube videos that explained how to use it at the various steps. And as someone that was relatively new to brewing, particularly all grain brewing, aside from a couple of failed experiments with stock pots, well, not failed experiments, it was fine, they were a bit messy and a bit sticky, and I thought, you know, I'd treat myself to something a bit better. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just lift the grain basket out, if I can. Now it's got a rather clever, it's really heavy, rather clever series of indentations on the inside of the kettle and a couple of latches. So what you can do is sparge in 2 stages. Bring that up, you'll be able to hear hopefully the grain, the water, the wort in the grain draining through. Now we're going to sparge that. Now halfway through the mash, I put on 2 stock pots of water to try and bring it up to the temperature of about 76 degrees Celsius. And we'll use that water to sparge this lot. We don't need the lid of the pump anymore. The pump we'll use later for filling our fermenter. But I've taken those off now. We don't need those. And it's just sparging now. And so we'll try and get another 12, 13 litres in there and see how that goes. And then once we've done that, we can start the boil. So I've mentioned sparging a few times, as well as being a rather amusing word. I've not really explained what it is. So we've got the grain basket raised here, and I've got 2 stock pots, like I said. What sparging is all we're doing is we're circling new water through the grains, just to really get the most out of the grains into the wort. You can. When I've done an all grain before, what I've done is I've tried to recycle or circulate the wort back through the grains, but it's not really possible with this. I'm sure there's a way of making it possible, but I'm not particularly interested in that. And what I want to do is actually just top up that water to get it to about 26, 27 litres, because once we get into the fermentation stage, we'll need about 20 litres, but what will happen with the boil is obviously water will evaporate. So we're bringing up the volume, trying to get as much of the sugars now out of the grain as possible, because as soon as we finish the sparging, that grain is spent. We don't use it. You can make biscuits and stuff, or compost it, but you don't really, that's it, it's gone. All we're doing is trying to maximise the amount of sugars we're getting out of that grain. So all I'm doing is I've just got a stock pot right next to my kettle, and just slowly just pouring water over my grain basket to try and circulate that water. Like I said, the water's about 76 degrees Celsius centigrade. I don't know if those are stupid, I don't know if those are the same thing. But you get the gist of it, you know. And this is probably the most boring thing you'll ever see. A lot of brewing videos are quite boring, but all we're doing is, like I said, just recirculating, getting this most amount of sugars we can, because it's the sugars that the yeast will be fermenting, and that's what turns a grainy water into yummy beer. And also it's what removes the sweetness out of it. I mean, you can make sweeter beers. It depends on the yeast you use and the grains you use. Different yeast will ferment different sugars. That's why things like milk stouts tend to be a lot sweeter, because you put lactose in there, which is just basically a sugar derived from milk, I think. But the yeast can't convert those sugars into alcohol, so the sweetness remains. There we go. I'm going to turn the video off now and just carry on, because this is going to be the brewing equivalent of watching paint dry for you guys. See you in a bit. So So I mentioned I did 2 stock pots of water up to about 76 degrees. Here's another one, about 6 litres or so. And the reason I've done them in two separate lots is that we did 2 stages for the sparge. And this nice thing again with this grain basket is when I put my back out, call an ambulance if I sort of yelp out in pain. We've got these little lips. There we go. So we can just raise it up a bit, and then what we've got is a bit more secondary stage of sparging, just to sort of get that second lot of water through it at a higher temperature, and that really stops the grain sitting in the water that you're sparging through, just to make sure that you're not, well, just to make sure that it's draining as much as possible. It should be nice, and the grain should be nice and dry, and get as much water out as possible by the time we've finished. Okay, see you for the boil. I've sparged, taken the grain basket out, that's now outside sitting there, drained it as much as I could. Now for the boil, it's beeping me to tell me it's reached the temperature. So we've got a boil at 60 minutes here. It's not a massively complex recipe, so we've just got sort of 3 hop additions throughout. This is the hops, Zeus, again from Dark Farms. It's not hugely aromatic, like compared to lots of others, but it's mostly a bittering hop, so it's there mostly for the flavour rather than the aroma. The recipe says to use about 120 grams of this, 50 to 60 during the boil, and sorry if you're getting dizzy, it's just a bit of blackness there. 50 to 60 during the boil, and then another 60 for dry hopping. I've only got 50 grams of this, so what I'm going to do is do my boil with what I've got, and then I'm going to decide whether I think it needs dry hopping. You know, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. If I do, I'm probably going to use something like an Amarillo. It's quite a nice sort of finishing or aromatic hop, just to get a bit more of a nose to it. It is more of a hoppy ale than what I normally do, which is more like a sort of a Pilsner ale hybrid, so that sort of hoppiness will help, and it'll help balance with the sort of the density of the biscuit malts that are in there. So yeah, so I don't use a hop spider. Some people do. Here's the boil up to temperature, bubbling away. I don't know if you can see that. Don't use a hop spider. All I need to make sure is that when I'm cleaning it afterwards, I give it a good scrub, because the first time I used it, I thought I'd cleaned it, but I hadn't, and then there were black residues in there which got into the next batch. I don't think it's sort of tainted it at all. It's just not very nice. The other thing is that the last time I did it, I was a bit didn't read the instructions properly. I put the lid on for the boil, and obviously I had beery, worty, firm boiling everywhere. Need to keep the lid off at this stage, but as you can see, it's bubbling away nicely. I'll give it a good stir in a second just to make sure those hops are right in there. And yeah, we'll just keep coming back every 20 minutes or so just to add some more hops. The initial hop wasn't much, about 7.5 grams, then 15 grams at 20, and then 30 grams at 40, and then just for the last 20 minutes I'll probably add a protoflac about 10 minutes before the end, just to help with the cleaning. Give it 10 minutes worth of that. The other thing I'll do is halfway through is I'll add my chiller, just to sterilise the outside of that for when I'm chilling. I'll talk that through a bit in a minute when I've got to that stage. But yeah, it's going to go in. It's boiling away nicely. In an hour or so's time, let's chill this back down. This is also a good time to get everything ready for the next phase. So like I said, get your chiller ready. I've got a Firmzilla fermenter, so I can do pressurized fermenting and dry hopping. So that's, I cleaned that this morning because I only just got around to kegging the last batch. Thirsty work, this brewing malarkey. So that's just sitting outside with some bog standard CPV, some sort of cleaning stuff. Cleans and sanitizes, but it isn't rinse free. So what I'll probably do is drain that and then just put a little bit of Star San in there, give it a good shake before I'm ready to ferment and add the yeast. But we'll come on to that in a bit. Cheers. Okay, so the boil's finished. It's quite hot and humid in here. So as you'd expect with 27 litres of beer boiling away. That's been an hour now. I've done various hop additions. I've done 3 different hop additions, one at the start, one after 20, one after 40. Halfway through the boil, I put my chiller in there. I'm not, well, you're just looking at my microwave, obviously. Let me just adjust that side. So my chiller's in there, ready to go. Cleaned out and sanitized the fermenter. I had a bit of a mishap. Obviously didn't realise or forgot that there was some ambient water and condensation in the chiller. So as soon as that went into a thing that was very hot, boiling temperature, some might say, all the water came out and went everywhere. Narrowly missed the plugs, but I'm alive. Water and electrics don't mix, but I got away with that one. Note for next time. The other thing I did was, with 10 minutes to go, I just put a small Protoflac tablet. I think that's Irish seaweed or something like that. And that's just really to help the sediment that's still in the beer settle out during fermentation. Yeah, so now we've got the now we've had an hour of boil. My job is to get this thing that's currently 100, maybe a light off. It's better to see that. Maybe not. I don't know. It's a pretty cheap camera. Don't tell my son. It was his birthday present. But yeah, so our job now is to get that 100 down to 21C. Now, when I first started doing all grain brews, I didn't have any chillers or anything. I tried various experiments with a cool box full of ice and bits and bobs just to sort of pass liquid through and try my best to get it as cool as possible. It took ages. And obviously what we want to do is try and get this temperature down as quickly as possible. That means that we don't lose the hoppy flavour, and it sort of keeps it more sanitary. So the aim now is to get in half an hour that 100 degrees down to 21 degrees centigrade. So I'll get it all hooked up and then show you what's happening. Here we go. Right, so the chiller's all set up. I have what can best be described as a bit of a Heath Robinson setup. It's coming straight off my a sort of tap line I've put in our downstairs loo. Hygienic, I assure you. It's just the water that's going through the chiller. It's not water that's being applied to the beer in any way. So we have coming through this room a series of hoses, just garden hoses, a few kinks, which is going to slow it down. I need to unkink that. And that's then going into a John Guest fitting with some tubing, another John Guest fitting. Now, this is the one bit I don't like really. It's a bit wasteful, so I've just got a little water butt so that at least the water that I'm using as part of the brew can be used again. Sorry, as part of the chilling. Last time it ended up with just pouring loads of water down the drain, which just seems really wasteful. You can get really super duper things that recycle water and, you know, apply chemicals to really get that temperature down, but I'm just going to use bog standard cold water from the tap. Then hopefully this sort of 24, 25 litres of wort is going to come down in temperature quite quickly. When I say quite quickly, in half an hour or so. And if I look, you know, you can see slowly but surely the coil that's inside. So the chiller, I mean, I don't know if you saw it, like the chiller is essentially just a coil. It's a cold bit of steel, cold water passes through it and comes out the other end, slightly warmer than it was when it's going in. And that coil has a large surface area, so that surface area, all that's doing is that's just exposing what is just a series of metal pipes, just bringing that temperature down with as much surface area as possible to get this wort down to hopefully a nice cool temperature. I'll leave it half an hour. I've got, like I said, I've fermented up my keg and not fermented up my keg. What am I talking about? I've sanitized my fermenter and cleaned it and sanitized it. I'm just going to leave this running now, and maybe I can start tidying up, because with all the best in the world, brewing is a messy pursuit, and I need to get my kitchen straight again. But I'll leave that running half an hour's time, then we'll get ready for putting all that lovely wort into the fermenter. Bright light, bright light, bright light, bright light, bright light. So, right, so that chilling took a lot longer than I thought it would. It was, I don't know, it just took ages. I tried my butt. My butt filled up really quickly. Tried varying the temperature. I even put the hoses I was using into a sort of chiller with some ice packs just to see if that would speed it up. It just took a long time. I can't really add the yeast until it gets to about 25 degrees, so I've done that now. I've got my Firmzilla fermenter already, so that's been sanitized, cleaned. I've got the wort down to 23.5, which is fine. The yeast will tolerate anything below 25, so I ideally wanted it to be 21, but it was just taking too long. So all I need to do is flick the pump and then turn, or it was on already. I've got to adjust the valve, haven't I? And then we can adjust the flow that way. So there we go. So it should be about a bit more than I was expecting, about 23 litres. I've got to not to forget taking a gravity reading. We do need some, so then we can know what the alcohol is like when it's finished. That's pretty much that, except for the cleaning up, which is going to take a wee while. But it's messy stuff, isn't it? And once the keg's filled, I'll just fill you guys in. We're all done, except for the tidy up. You won't be interested in that. So what I've got my Firmzilla. Turn around, and that's 21, 22 litres of beer. I've added the yeast. So this is using Farley USO5. I don't know if you can see that. It's going to be out of focus anyway. So yeah, so I put in the yeast. I've got the temperature right down nicely, just a little bit above what I wanted, but it's enough that it's not going to kill the yeast off. This is a pressurized fermenter, so I need to put a valve on there, a spunding valve, and that'll let us know how that'll release pressure as it builds up as the yeast ferments. I'm going to move this into a darker, cooler room. The original gravity came in pretty much exactly what I was wanting. We were aiming for, I think, 1.061, and little buggers. This one's coming in at, I don't even know if you can see it, it's the wrong way around anyway. So it's just about 1.062, so a little bit out, but not enough that it's going to cause me tears and distress. So yeah, we're all done now, just the big tidy, and then we'll probably dry hop it in about a week to 10 days, and then see how we go from there.